Welcome everyone to the Learning to Birth webinar series where we interview some of the world's most interesting and inspiring thought leaders about birth and pregnancy. We have with us today Nicole Moore, who is an advanced facilitator for Birth into Being Australia. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really well. I'm a huge fan of Birth into Being. And I watched like the original Birth into Being film like probably 10 years ago. It's life-changing. I'm really, do you want to tell us about, who you are and what Birth into Being is and how you got involved in it?
Yeah, sure. So I live in the forest. We were just chatting about that. I live in the forest by the sea, northern New South Wales. I had amazing birth experiences. I was very, very blessed to land within a community of women who had, it was just a long line of women who had amazing home birth experiences. So there wasn't a culture of fear around it. It was just a clear and easy path. This is the midwife. This is what you need to do around your home to make it happen. And, good luck. And not even good luck, actually, just a complete expectation that everything would be fine. And of course it was. They were life-changing experiences. And, I experienced an incredible transformation in terms of feeling very empowered and, sorry, I'm going to make sure that nothing bips.
That's fine.
Yeah, then I was making films before that, independent films. I've always had a lot to say. And I immediately wanted to make a film about birth because I was like, everybody needs to know about this. How can people deprive themselves of this incredible opening and this, oxytocin rush that was just mind-blowing. And not just for me, but for everybody that was in the birth space. So, my partner, my friend, the midwife, and the whole community actually, because I had a lovely postpartum period with people dropping off food and everybody enjoyed the oxytocin generated by my son's birth. And so I really wanted to share the joy of that. So I started researching to make a film. I came across Birth as We Know It, which is the older sister of the Birth into Being film.
Ah, that's right. Yes.
So Birth into Being is a number of births back to back, not a lot of dialogue. And then Birth as We Know It is the film that Elena really wanted to make, which is, there's a lot of commentary and a lot of, exploration around conscious birth. And both of those films, I used them as part of my research to make my film, which is still in gestation 17 years later.
We've got to make it happen. We've got to do it.
Yeah, well, I met Elena and, I hosted her for a workshop here in Australia and basically my life trajectory changed. I haven't quite made that film yet. I've made a few others in the interim. But yeah, Birth as We Know It is an absolute testament to how powerful the medium of film can be because like you said, you loved it, millions of people all over the world. Like there's about 5 trailers up on YouTube and all of them have had over 2 million hits. Like it's incredible. And the way that it influences people, the way that it opens them up to a positive birth experience is magic. And so, yeah, I've started working with Elena and the Birth into Being method. And basically it's a method of preparing yourself for birth or life through looking at your own birth, looking at how your own birth has influenced your life and your limbic imprint.
Wow. See, the thing that I found really life-changing about the film, right, even though it only goes for half an hour, is that it really only depicts these women. You're a filmmaker, you understand some films, like they have to create tension and negative feelings to have that, peak and resolution and happiness at the end. Whereas that film is really just like, this is birth, this is beautiful, beautiful is all there is. And you are beautiful too, this is yours. And it's just that calm feeling you can really dip into. And I was like, whoa, if they can do that, I can do that. And I did that for my second birth. I had a water birth, took, about 50 minutes. was totally calm, you know, everything perfect. So it actually affected my life beautifully. Do you want to tell us like what the mission is about? Like what is birth into being, the mission?
Well, there's a couple of contexts for that. Now, the big, broad picture is conscious evolution. Our species needs to retain the ability to love. So we have evolved as a species and as a culture, you know, the Western culture that is permeating the world, has evolved in a quite separatist way.
Oh, yeah.
I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, where, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, but how hard is it to find the village, right?
Impossible.
And how hard is it to maintain the village once you've found it? How hard is it to trust? And all of these things are related to our neural programming that begins at conception or even earlier. Like, we can get really esoteric about it, or we can just say, you know, somewhere along the spectrum of a baby coming into the world, be preconception all the way through to their early months of life, and definitely with birth being a big pivotal event in that, creates a blueprint and a setting within their limbic system that carries on throughout their life and influences how they are. So when we understand that and we can put some positive input into that, that is a form of conscious evolution. And so the mission of birth into being is to positively influence the journey and the landing ground and the experiences, the early life experiences of our future generations. Because if we want to survive and thrive as a species, we need to retain our ability to love. And a lot of the, you know, stressful and traumatic birth experiences raise the cortisol levels of mother and baby to a point where they don't activate their oxytocin, and then their oxytocin ability, or their, you know, their access to it is kind of hindered. And that's a real shame. So that's one of the missions. And then the other mission is positive birth. Just for the sake of that lifetime of that child and that mother and their postpartum period. You know, we all know that postpartum depression is closely linked to how a woman experiences her birth, and she may have a completely natural vaginal birth, but still experience it as traumatic. You know, it's about having the state of being. It's not about the outcome of the birth and how the birth, you know, how the baby enters the world. You know, by that I mean the route of which they enter the world, because, you know, there's amazing things happening in the world of cesarean at the moment, where, you know, when somebody knows that a cesarean is necessary and they're able to put all the pieces in place so that cesarean can be as gentle as possible, and as non-stressful as possible as well. So it's about really shining the light on the importance of birth for life, and so helping mothers and families to create optimal situations where theirs and their baby's ability to love is not hindered.
That's beautiful. It's a really good explanation. It calls into my mind, and I'm terrible with names at the moment, but the author of Magical Child, you probably know him and his work.
Joseph Clinton Pierce, is it?
Well, it's not Joseph though. It's Michael. Anyway, Charles.
I know.
Yes. In the end, Magical Child was his first work, or one of his first works, and then he really wrote books. I think one's called Transcendence of Being, and then there's Heart Mind Matrix. And he really, by the end of
Michael Mendeza or something like that?
No, he took it over. He took it over once the author died. He took over the foundation. Okay. But his later books are all about how if the mother has peaceful experiences when the baby's in utero, the baby's brain builds entirely differently. And, you know, whereas like if our mother's been stressed during the pregnancy, we have a lot of focus on the neocortical brain. If the mum's had a really peaceful pregnancy, the child instead builds a really big, you know, prefrontal lobe, and, you know, which is the spiritual kind of center of the brain and everything. It was just such an interesting work, and what you've just said kind of resonates with that, although it's, you know, separate to what you're doing. We've talked a little bit.
It does raise a point though, which I think is really important, and especially when there's, you know, this is going out to a whole bunch of expectant mothers. It's really important to not harbor guilt and shame for the shit that happens. Like, life happens and stress happens, and using our, you know, what we know about the development of a baby in utero and the emotional development and the limbic system, using that to whip ourselves is not the aim.
Yeah.
It is about using our understanding to, you know, to positively hold and nurture that child regardless of what happens, because it's completely possible for an expectant mother, let's say she experiences a big shock and some grief, you know, let's say her own father dies while she's pregnant. It's unavoidable, and but she can communicate with the baby. Yeah. Mummy's really sad. Yeah. Mummy's going through so much right now, and it's not about you.
Yes.
You're responsible. Mama's got this. It's hard right now, you know, as the sobs move through her body, and it's not about you, my darling. You know, it's about using our awareness, you know, to know better, do better, not to whip and shame ourselves about the shit that's happened or the births that we've already had that didn't go according to plan. I need to get that out front and center.
It's so true.
Because, you know, especially sleep deprived mothers and things like that, it's really easy to kind of internalize and turn this stuff around into being something that's self-defeating.
It kind of comes down to, though, how we shouldn't, you know, whip ourselves or blame ourselves about anything ever, really.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pattern we don't need to do. It's not, you know, the stuff that happens in our life, it happens, and it's about how we rise to the occasion and just love it.
That's right. And as we know better, do better.
Yeah, yeah. You've talked a little bit about limbic imprinting. For people who have never heard of this before, what is it?
The limbic system is the part of the brain that develops first. Shame I'm not prepared. I could have shown you the amazing pictures in the book A Child is Born by Lennart Nielsen.
Do you want me to pause it and you go grab? I can pause the recording and you grab the book if you want to.
No, it's okay. I'll just say it and then people can look it up. It's Lennart Nielsen, and he is the photographer who took amazing in utero photographs, and there is photographs in there that show the very, very young fetus as a very reptilian looking creature, where the nervous system in the brain and the whole spinal cord is the first things to develop. And basically that limbic system, that part of the brain, it sort of sits in the center, and it harbors the amygdala and basically, you know, all of the emotional response centers of the brain, and that develops first. And so that's how the mother's experiences during her pregnancy have an impact on the actual neurological pathways of that child. So if the mother is in a constant stress state, the child will develop the pathways of their brain to accommodate that, to accommodate those extra cortisol levels. And then throughout life, that becomes like sort of the basic setting, where even when we say we want something different or we feel like we want something different, we may unconsciously recreate the same circumstances. And it's the mechanism by which we hold ourselves back in life and in birth. And it's also the mechanism of generational imprinting. I'm aware that when I start to say these phrases, each one is a new
It's a whole new
complete new trajectory. But
yeah.
Generational imprinting is, you know, when basically generations are recreating the same patterns, and that's really common in birth. You see it in families all the time. Oh yeah, my auntie birthed like this, and then my mum and my grandma, and you know, you sometimes see that the stories recreated throughout a woman's female lineage.
It makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. I mean, you're there to adapt to your environment and to survive in that particular environment.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, you know, a lot of us are familiar with the whole concept of how, you know, our stress responses are quite a primal state of being, you know, like we no longer have the saber-toothed tiger chasing us, you know, that analogy. And that is the mechanism of limbic imprinting as well, whereby our brains have developed, and with each subsequent generation, continue to harbour states of being that don't necessarily serve our current day situation. And that is true for birth as well.
So when women come, or families come to you to work in the birth into being framework, how can a mother, you know, re-imprint herself? What happens? What's the benefits of it?
Yeah. So intention is a really big part of the puzzle, and we do creative work together. You know, the birth into being method has like 40 different exercises that we can do. So what we choose to work with depends on what's presenting, and you know, the sort of personality type and the you know, just what a woman is asking for, and you know, what sits underneath what she's asking for as well. And we do creative exercises to create new experiences for the nervous system to attach to. That's the easy way to explain it.
Right, so it's like an immersive experience, and they get to rebuild those pathways and their beliefs about themselves and who they are and what their potential is. And
yeah, exactly. So I work with the birth into being method specifically in regards to birth preparation and birth healing. So for women who have had less than optimal experiences, and sometimes that's in preparation for the next baby, and sometimes it's just because they can sense that it's holding them back, or that, you know, they're experiencing hardship in their parenting, and want to deal with some of the stuff that happened at the birth in order to clear that pathway. And but the birth into being method, as it is enacted internationally, is actually for people from all different categories or all walks of life. We just did a 45-person workshop in Germany, and only 2 of the participants were pregnant. But yeah, it's basically about giving the nervous system, using our intention, so our openness and our willingness to receive, to create and cultivate experiences for the nervous system to open up to, and as I said, cultivate something new. And so many of the things that we do in order to prepare for birth actually have a really positive impact for our life.
Wow. Yeah, so that's true. That's coming out in a lot of the talks here on the webinar. It's just about your life. It's the birth is just the pathway, but it's actually about you and your life.
Oh, it's such an incredible time for personal transformation and growth. I mean, when you need to learn how to stand up to a care provider, you're learning how to stand up to, you know, your partner, your mother-in-law, you know, yourself, if you're beating yourself up over things. Like, you know, everything that we learn in preparation for birth is extremely useful in our mothering and in our lives in general.
If a mum wants to give her baby like the best limbic imprint possibility that she can through her intention, what do you say to her? What can she do? Time
and space. Those incredibly valuable and ever elusive, I was going to say qualities, but, you know,
they're elements kind of almost. They're elemental to this world. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, like, but really, really giving yourself that, because it's becoming harder and harder to do that. And yet, you know, it really allows you to open up to new things, and it really allows you to be calm and to generate that state of loving. Cortisol, the stress hormone, and oxytocin, the love hormone, don't operate in tandem.
Wow.
They cancel each other out.
Because as a mum, busy mum,
Yeah, so
around, pom, 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 you know, it's hard work. Yeah.
especially for subsequent pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it sounds like so simple to say, give yourself time and space. I mean, look, I've got any host of various exercises and things that I do when I'm working with clients. But, you know, the simple answer to that question for a woman who's just looking for what can I do to help my baby come in gently and to have, you know, a nurturing time in their pregnancy, or in their in utero life. And that is to give yourself time and space. Sleep in, go to bed early, get the rest that your body needs. Give yourself the time to meander along the riverbank. It's gold when it comes to connecting in with the baby and allowing oxytocin to flow. And allowing oxytocin to flow through your pregnancy.
Yeah.
Also allow it to flow during the birth experience if it's not being tampered with by other stressful circumstances.
Yes.
I also feel that having time and space really allows a woman to consider her choices, not just mindlessly rush from one appointment to the next and be funneled along a path. It's never been more true that we need to actually take self-responsibility for our choices and in our pregnancies and births. Unfortunately, our medical model is failing us. There's no point beating around the bush. There are a lot of really shitty care providers out there, and it's up to a pregnant woman to be conscious about her choices. You are not obliged,
I think
to funnel along.
No.
You have to take control of it. And it's really, really unfortunate, because a pregnant woman should be held and loved and find her pathway. It's just not the case for the majority of women today. If you've got a fantastic care provider, wonderful. If you don't, change. And women need time and space to consider that and to build up their, you know, internal muscles to being able to say, I'm sorry, I've decided to change care providers.
Yeah. It's this beautiful point in history, I feel. You know, women right now need to be so discerning, because we've made so many gains now. You know, we can choose who we marry, you know, what gender they are. We can choose if we work and how we work. You know, we can own property, get a credit card, vote, do 1,000 different things, right? That maybe 100 years ago we couldn't. But it's like this one thing is like our fertility and our procreative capacity. It's like that is what we really need to claim. And once we've claimed that, like then it will just be flow for the rest of us, in the rest of our lives, you know?
There'd be no stopping us.
No
stopping us. Once the majority of women are able to really own and experience the wonder that is their womanhood, their physicality, and their absolute, you know, the absolutely mind-blowing creative possibilities of what it is to bring life forth, there will be no stopping us. And, you know, look at Greta.
Yes.
Greta Thunberg. I mean, she's really on my mind at the moment, because tomorrow's the climate change march. I will bet my booties that she was born beautifully.
Yeah. And that's the power of this, isn't it?
Minimal trauma, because the, you know, her drive and her lack of inhibition around moving forward with love is incredible. Yeah. Jacinda.
Yes.
I'll bet my booty she was born well too. And yeah, like I said, it's a delicate balance, because it's not about blaming or shaming, you know, all the women that have had really unfortunate circumstances unfold. But it is about being as educated as possible about how important it is for yourself as a mother and your baby to have a birth with minimal interventions.
It's about choice. Like, what do you choose? If you had any choice in front of you and you could do anything and nothing limited you, like, what would you choose then, you know? And that's what's so beautiful what you're saying, is because it's like about Greta and Jacinta Ardern, who's the
New Zealand
Prime Minister of New Zealand, for anyone who's listening around the world who doesn't know who Jacinta Ardern is. Obviously,
here in Australia, she just lives in our hearts, doesn't she?
Yes, we all want her to be our Prime Minister. We're all wanting, like, New Zealand to come and take over Australia, and, you know, it's like, if women take back that birthing power, not only can you not stop us in our lives, but it's like the world shifts, the world changes, because it can go from that state that you mentioned of separation, fear, anxiety, stress, striving, you know, always feeling of lack, to, oh, peace, love, we have enough, abundance. How can we co-create? How can we collaborate? How can we cooperate? You know, how can we be generous and benevolent and just, you know, draw on that infinite well of inspiration?
Yeah, and that's why I do the work that I do, is because I truly believe that the future of our species rests on our ability to remain connected, rests on our ability to have relationships of trust and safety, because then we can work together to enact the enormous change that we need to do in order to thrive into the future. And, you know, so a really sad example is all these terrible shootings that are happening in the States, you know, where kids and young adults are, you know, very violently acting out their pain. And you know, it's a terrible state of being, and it's so contagious, because for anybody that experiences something like that, to then overcome that fear and that post-traumatic stress and come back to love is really, really difficult. And so it's just so important that when we, through our birth experiences, don't experience stress and trauma, when we come in gently with love, surrounded by love, we go on to have a non-depressed mother.
Yes.
You know, a mother who is emotionally available to us, who is available to love and care for us, and to continue to develop that limbic system of safety and love. We will grow into adults who can then hold that space for others. And it's this thing, and it needs to happen en masse now. It needs to happen last century.
How does a woman, like, how does a mum who's listening to these talks, if she feels like there is something, you know, holding her back in life, you know, what is that, and how can she break through it?
She can come to my workshops and she can start to, you know, have a little poke around in how did she enter this world? What is the story of her birth? I mean, part of the preparation that I do when I'm working with people either online or in workshops is to ask those questions, and ask them to ask their parents, if they still can, about how they entered the world. And usually there's some keys there or clues as to where the gaps might be. If there was perpetual stress, if there was a peak event of fear. You know, it's about using that early life period to provide us with the intel of where we're needing to fill ourselves up. And, you know, the wonderful, wonderful news is that it's never too late. It's never too late to give your nervous system an experience of a beautiful birth. And it's our brains are neuroplastic. I'm sure you've heard that term of neuroplasticity. And that's what, you know, the whole thing about this limbic imprint and the fact that it's so powerful in the world of us is that it's also plastic. It means that it can stretch and shape and change. And, you know, when a person brings a strong intention to change and strong willingness to cultivate a new state of being, and then you give them the tools of how to do that, it's entirely possible. And then when you couple that with an incredible birth, she's well on her way. There's a lot of women that have had amazing birth experiences that say, and myself included actually, that it changed my life forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Changed who I am in the world.
Yeah. I'm feeling quite inspired by what you're saying. I'm thinking, I really want to just go home, go somewhere quiet and just send back healing thoughts to my time in utero, my baby's times in utero, and all things that, you know, went on and happened, and just, you know, go back in time and heal those things that we went through that are, you know, encoded in our energetic system now.
Yeah. And there's some really simple techniques, you know, just for a few sort of take homes. You can put a picture of your baby self on your fridge, or make a little altar, and, you know, bring that inner child into your current life. And like you said, give them love, you know, make a beautiful little space for that image of baby you, and direct some energy and some love towards her. You can write a letter. You can make a quick audio, your little darling self, and you'd be amazed, you know, at what comes out. You'd be amazed at just what those simple little tools can bring up in terms of connection and holding of yourself. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Yeah,
talking to a pillow, you know. And the thing is that when we work on these wounds within ourselves, it has an incredibly positive impact upon our parenting, because connecting in with our baby self and our toddler self and everything helps to inform us about what our children's needs are. And it kind of unlocks our ability, it unlocks or it enables more access to our loving. So, because I'm not saying our loving is locked, but it helps us to know more of what they need and feel into that, and to access more of our ability to give. Because, you know, it's hard to continuously give as a mother. And sometimes, you know, it just helps us to connect in with our baby self, to know, you know, what it means for a child to be held while they cry. You know, or to be patient when you're called in for the 100th time of an evening. Whatever.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. I do that actually when I feel off track. I'm like, what if I just feel like I felt when I was like 18 months old, and who I was then, and who would I be right now in this body, and how would I be? And I just be that. And like with my own kids, if I'm feeling like, because one of them's a teenager, if I'm feeling like, you know, like, whoa, what do I do here? I just, you know, feel into him when he was around the same age, and hopefully get some more resilience and inspiration about what to do in the situation. You know, you talk about how birth is a somatic experience. I mean, somatic is probably a word we might want to unlock a little bit, but do you want to talk about how birth is a somatic experience, and how a mum might connect with that?
Yeah, well, you know, somatic basically means feeling, and yeah, it's just that thing of like, depending on where a woman is choosing to birth and what kind of care she's organised for herself, she may or may not be exposed to ideas of connecting in with her body. And one of the things that we do in Birth into Being workshops, and that I still do as a practice just for my life, I mean, my kids are teenagers now too, is dance, and conscious dance. Dance where I am feeling every cell in my body, feeling, you know, what it means to the muscles, feeling what a particular stretch or a movement might activate in my heart or in my feeling state. Embodying gestures and states of being that flow through you, you know, when you put on a piece of music, and really accessing your body wisdom, because and again, it's all about choices that people make around birth, but you know, and what their plans are. But if you can cultivate throughout your pregnancy a deep relationship with your feeling state, and with your body and your body awareness, you know, I feel anxious, where do I feel it?
Yeah, that's powerful.
I feel fearful, where do I feel that in my body? And instead of turning away from it, turning towards it, leaning into those feelings. And again, space and time. You know, really giving yourself the ability to go, you know, yeah, that's there.
The tension will just drop away. I mean, letting go of tension is so important during pregnancy for so many reasons. You know, and if you don't even want to admit it's there, then it's very hard for it to go.
Yeah, and just cultivating that relationship throughout your pregnancy, so that when, you know, strong sensations are moving through your body in labor, and where there is, for example, maybe, you know, people saying, you've got 20 minutes to go before we intervene. You know, where you can access that stuff quickly. You know, and again, it's all about what you choose, because, you know, there are birth situations where you're not going to have that pressure. But in a hospital setting, there is often a time frame going on. And so therefore, you know, it's not like, and plus you've got your partner there worried. Depending what else you've organised for your birth, you may have other people present who are impacting the field. You really need to be able to get in there, into your body and into the sensations that are moving through you with ease. And you can't expect that to happen instantly with all those other pressures. You need to cultivate it way back before pregnancy. In fact, let's turn on the music and start dancing now.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's really, dance is an incredible tool. Yep. Whoops, that is my son ringing me. I'm just hanging up on him.
This is all about kids, so it's all about being
yeah, I'm just going to drop him a quick text.
Yeah.
He's 17. I did tell him I was busy this morning.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah.
This is the real education to the mums to be listening to this. This is the real motherhood. That's actually a really good question, like that you talk about. You know, we you know, the birth is one thing, but the shock of actual motherhood is entirely different. Like, you've gone from being an autonomous being to someone who is not only not autonomous, but you're now looking after this other being and totally responsible. How can a woman prepare herself for that shock?
Spend time with other mothers. Spend time with other babies. Organize your life so that you're not expecting too much of yourself. You know, I mean, that tradition of having a lying in period postpartum is like, I cannot recommend that strongly enough. I had a pretty extended lying in with both my children, and I was completely supported during that time by wonderful people in my life who, and a one girlfriend in particular when I was pregnant with my first, who really got it into me that I did need a food roster and that it was okay to ask people that, and she organised it for me. And that was incredible.
Yeah.
It spaced out the visitors, which meant that you weren't inundated at any time with people, because everybody understood that they had their day on the roster. And there is a fantastic app now called mealtrain.com, which does it all online. And people can sign up, they can cancel, they can put down what meal they're delivering so that the person on the next day can see that and not bring in chicken soup. Because the last meal roster I did for another woman without that app was my next door neighbour. They got 7 chicken soups in a row.
Yeah, just the mention of food roster gives me heebie-jeebies, because I'm thinking chicken soup because it's happened to me, and I don't even eat. I'm like vegetarian, so
yeah. Well, so
I love
whichever
that.
way it happens, whether it happens manually or somebody uses Mealtrain, but Mealtrain is fantastic, and it's now my go-to, because I like to organise those for other people.
That's awesome.
17 years later, I am still paying it forward within my community. I love to cook for postpartum women, and it's such a valuable gift. Who needs another beanie? Who needs another pair of socks for that child? I had 17 hats for my firstborn. Totally unnecessary. But the food thing is incredible. It's such a big support. But then beyond that, not being ashamed to ask for help, and then also having, the ovaries or the balls to ask for the type of help that you need. So if your mother-in-law is coming around every single day and it's actually a pain in the ass, then you need to be able to say that to her nicely, kindly, gently. But I'm sorry, mother-in-law, it's too much for me. I really need to rest. I so love that you care. Can you please come every third day, second, third, fifth day?
Love the idea.
This is why, empowerment is such a theme throughout pregnancy and birth and the postpartum period, is because you need to be able to set your boundaries. You need to be able to ask for the help that you need, not just randomly opening up to whatever other people need. That shock that happens for first-time mothers, there's all these different ways of potentially getting around it, but it's a really tricky thing, because what I've found with first-time mums is that no matter how much you talk about it, they sort of don't hear it.
It's too traumatic.
I don't. Yeah. Yeah. And I think also one other thing that I really like to say to pregnant women is, to cultivate their community.
Yeah.
So that then when they are postpartum, they maybe have already connected with a bunch of other pregnant women who are giving birth around the same time, and they can visit with each other and go and sit on the beach together or in the park with their babies, commiserate, be together, share their highs and lows, so that there's not that feeling of isolation. Because especially if a woman is giving birth, if she's the first of her group, it may be hard to find that support or that network that you really need. And the reason that it's so important to cultivate those friendships is because your partner is also going through massive changes. And whether that's a man or a woman, they also can feel responsible for things if you need to have a whinge. And that's hard. And then before you know it, you're in relationship difficulties. And then, no. Like the whole postpartum year is fraught with difficulty. And cultivating strong friendships with other women who have birthed around the same time is a really great way to combat that.
There's a couple of really great takeaways in there. Oh my God, takeaway! Because I really love that we live in the age of the smartphone app, because the whole idea that there's a roster people can come on separate days. I think that is really good, because otherwise your experience might be everyone wants to come in those first couple weeks and then ghosted, you know. So it's really great for the mum's just mental and emotional well-being to know that she's going to have maybe someone pop over every day or other day and have that moment of chatting. And the other thing, and dropping food off. And the other thing you've brought up is, building that network, because I can definitely say, as the first woman in my, cohort of connections back then, I was the first one to be birthing, and no one, the whole shock of now, how do I socialize at all with any of them? Because you can't go in the movies, can't go out to, really like the cinema or anything. You can't do any of these things on their time scale anymore. And I was like, well, who do you now have relationships with and feel bonded to? And the earlier that you can create those bonds, like through going to pregnancy yoga and meeting other mums, it's just going to be so much easier for you to feel connected after the birth.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's no two ways about it. Having a baby brings an enormous amount of change, and that's change in every single area of your life, including your friendship groups. Yeah. And if you are not the first woman in your cohort to have a baby, then hopefully you'll have people around you who understand where you're at. But even so, it can be hard for them to make the time. So, one of my dear friends had, I'm 45 now, so there's not a lot of newborn babies happening in my immediate friendship group. I still have lots of younger women around me, and that's beautiful. But one of my close friends had a late baby last year, and absolutely fantastic. And I committed to 1 day a week, and a visit, even if it was only an hour, it was at least 1 day of the week, if not many hours, and I would try to be as useful as possible in the kitchen or whatever whilst we chatted. But it was really hard to maintain sometimes, because my life is different now. And that will be the same for women all over the place, is that, when you are no longer a stay-at-home mum, it can be really hard to make time. And also it looks completely different. It's not the same kind of relationship. Like you said, you can't go to the movies. You don't go out drinking. You don't go dancing together. But there's no reason that you can't go to her house, put some music on your phone, and invite her to have a bit of a boogie with you. Whilst you're folding the washing, whilst you're drying the dishes, whilst you're stirring that soup, there is a lot of ways that you can still have fun with your postpartum friends. And it involves a lot of understanding on both sides. Yeah.
How can, people who are wanting to conceive, or people who have conceived and they're having a baby soon, how can they come and work with you, Nicole?
So I love working online, especially with second-time parents, because often they find it tricky to get to a workshop. I have sporadic workshops throughout the year here in Australia. I've just done a big thing in Germany as well, so I don't know, most of your listenership is probably Australian. And I do private retreats. So I live in the Bellingen area, which is northern New South Wales. You fly into Coffs Harbour. I come pick you up. I take you to a gorgeous Airbnb. We spend, however long you've got, whether that's 6 days or 3 days or 2 days, having a beautiful, juicy time in a wonderful natural environment, and doing very deep process work.
Oh, that sounds so powerful. I think that's something that anyone who's got the time and resources to do should really take up. It'd just be a beautiful experience. And Bellingen, I don't want to put it out there too loudly, because I don't want the hordes to come, but Bellingen is just heaven on earth. One of the locations there are called the Promised Land. I love the Promised Land. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, well, actually one of the Airbnbs that I use is in the Promised Land, and that venue actually has a spa. So we go
Nicole, I'm coming.
outdoor spa. So we go from luxury down to budget. People can choose their own accommodation options, and I come and go doing the process work. Wow. And Yeah, it is. It's a very juicy way to work. And I love working in that private retreat model, especially when it's couples, because, you know, they've unplugged from their ordinary life. And, you know, they're really giving themselves and their incoming baby, whether they're preconception or they're already pregnant, that time. And it's also really personalized. So they can ask and really work on the issues that are current for them in their relationship. Whereas sometimes in a bigger workshop where there's, you know, 8 couples, it's a bit different. Yeah, and the same with online. It's I work either with women on their own or if their partner wants to be involved as well. And yeah, it's just a great option for people that have babies already. And
are there any resources that you would, apart from working with you, are there any resources that you would draw people towards from the Birth into Being framework?
Definitely the film, as we spoke about, Birth as We Know It. And on my website, there's a link to sign up and get a 25-minute version of that for free. There is downloads. You were talking about Birth into Being, but the
Rush. I was like the Rush, the really old Russian film that's like half an hour long that has the little babies in the water in the ocean. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. So that's Birth into Being, the film, and then there's Birth as We Know It, which has some of the same footage. But it's more of a commentary, and there's a 25-minute version for free on my website, and there's also a 72-minute version, and there's a director's commentary, and there's lots of different versions all available from the International Birth into Being site, which is just birthintobeing.com.
Oh, beautiful. Look, thank you.
That's a great free resource. And then I don't know if we're doing freebies with this, but I do webinars and things.
Whatever links we have, we'll put like your links like down here. So how do people follow you if they want to follow you online?
So I've got Birth into Being Australia on Facebook and Birth into Being on Instagram and my website, birthintobeing.com.au.
Well, thank you, Nicole, for being with us. When we wrap up, I tend to like to ask a general question, and I was going to ask the question about like what does it mean, like how we, like Elena's quote about how we can go in just one generation, you know, to a world of peace. You probably know the quote better than me, but we kind of covered that before, talking about just in the art and everything like that. But you could talk about that if you wanted, but my question for you, I guess, really general question to wrap up, and you can answer however you like, is like, how do we trust the unknown?
My intuitive answer to that is place your feet on the earth. Feel your roots go down into the center of the earth. Find a spark of love in your heart. Breathe and expand it. With each breath, expanding it more and more. That's how I find safety and love.
It's almost like being connected again to the placenta, you know, that placenta when we were in our mother's womb. If we can feel that cord again to earth, it's like a perpetual placenta feeding us and nurturing us, what you've just envisaged.
One of the most nurturing experiences we can have is to feel safe and loved in our mother's arms. And like I said before, it's never too late to experience that, no matter what your biological birth was like. And that's the gift that I bring to people, and I'd love to share it with people.
Oh, Nicole, I hope that's definitely what you do, and I just can't wait for more people to work with you and have the Birth into Being experience. It's everything that you talk about is just so beautiful.
Thank you. It's very juicy.
Yeah, totally juicy. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Learning to Birth webinar today with Nicole. Go follow her, find out about her programs, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Bye.